introductions. Do we have any requests? Representative Pishney.
I'll pull it down here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. I am Lon Pishney, representative of District 122. I do have a bill to introduce today that I've been told the RS number is 1068, and this is a bill for Finney County with regard to a sales tax authority for to build a law enforcement center and a jail, and it's very similar to the one that Seward County had for another purpose. So I bring that to you today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Committee, are there any questions? Yes, Representative Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Will the county vote on that like they did the other one?
That is correct. It would look just about like the Seward County one. The purpose for this is jail and law enforcement center, where theirs was road and bridge, I believe, or transportation related.
See no further questions. Without objection, the request is approved. Thank you. Representative Alcala.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Representative Angela Martinez, I'd like to introduce 25RS0956. It's a bill establishing a tax credit for expenses for care of an adopted cat or dog.
Okay. Committee, any questions? Okay. Without objection, the request is approved. Representative Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of Jackson City Main Street, Jordan, Kansas, Frank Bell, the Vice President of the Board of Directors, I'd like to bring RS1011, an act concerning tax or sales taxation related to exemption by a sales tax exemption, which is made by the Jackson City Main Street.
Committee, any questions? Okay. Without objection, the request is approved. Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 25RS0604. This will be on behalf of Catalyst. This bill would establish an income tax credit for small businesses that purchase advertising from qualified local news organizations. And again, that was on behalf of Catalyst.
Catalyst, okay. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, without objection, the request is approved. Do we have any further requests for bill introductions? Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Zach Denny. I'm Director of Government Affairs with the Kansas Department of Revenue. I would like to request 2025 RS1003. And this has to do with a technical correction to the personal exemption for head of household filers.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? I just had one. Is this in response to the special session bill? Is that just some clarification on the tax law we passed recently?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's a separate thing, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any further questions? If not, without objection, the request is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, committee. I'm Eric Stafford on behalf of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce with two bill requests for introduction. The first, 25 RS0453, is dealing with the single factor apportionment issue. And then the second one, 25 RS0208, is the income tax and corporate income tax growth trigger reduction. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, got two RS numbers there. Any questions, committee, on either one? Okay, without objection, the requests are approved.
Thank you.
Representative Helgerson, I apologize. Did you have something that, okay. Okay.
You'll have to tap
Okay.
if you want to raise your hand back there.
Okay, are there any further requests? Yes. I don't think your mic is on. There we
Thank
go.
you, Chairman Smith, members of the committee. I'm Jean Gowden with Kansans for Life, and I would like to request introduction of 25 RS 0160, which establishes a child tax credit.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any questions? Okay, without objection, the request is approved. Are there any further requests for bill introductions? Are we sure? No. We got enough to do here, I guess, it looks like so. Okay, we'll close that item of business and turn to our next item, which is a hearing on House Bill 2096. And I'll first turn to the reviser for an overview on that bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2096 would provide that the Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credits will be transferable from the year that the tax credit was originally issued. The bill provides that instead of the transfer qualifying beginning in the year the credit is transferred, the credit will be allowed to be transferred beginning in the year the cash investment was originally made by the qualified investor. An additional provision of the bill would provide a new subsection that states that changes contained in the bill shall apply retroactively to any credits issued for tax year 2022 and then all tax years thereafter, essentially making sure that it's clear that it goes back to 2022. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sievers. Committee, any questions for the reviser? See none, thank you. We'll turn now to Department of Revenue for an overview on the fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. There will be no fiscal impact with the changes of this bill. When the bill was first passed back in, I think, 2022, we estimated the fiscal impact at the statutory cap of $13 million, so there's no additional impact for this transferability provision that's in here.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you once again. This time we'll open up the proponent section testimony for House Bill 2096 and welcome first to committee Alex Orrell.
Good afternoon, committee. Alex Orrell, Senior Vice President of Government Relations with the Kansas Bankers Association. Appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak today. My apologies to the members of the Financial Institutions Committee that has to hear from me twice today. But we're talking about two very important issues. Sorry, Mr. Other Chairman on the left side of the room. Alex Orrell with the KBA. Good to be before tax again. Appreciate everything you guys do. For those that do not know who the KBA is, the KBA was founded in 1887. And we are one of the oldest banking trade associations in the country. We represent 98% of the Kansas headquartered banks, and we also represent 20 of the out-of-state national banks that are doing business in Kansas. That could also be a nationally chartered institution, big bank, or it could be a bank headquartered in St. Joe, Missouri that has a branch in Kansas. The KBA is a very diverse association. We're not just an advocacy group. Happy to be a part of a 42-member staff team that provides advocacy, legal, education services to our member banks. We just recently went through a new strategic plan, Mr. Chairman, where we revised our mission statement, but I want to state it for this committee. The KBA strengthens and supports the Kansas banking industry by advocating for sound financial policies, promoting innovation, and fostering economic growth across the state to ensure a vibrant financial future for all Kansans. It's really key to this piece of legislation that we're talking about today, and we're glad to support HB 2096. We were supporters of this legislation back in 2022. This issue in particular actually has been discussed the last couple of years, but there has been confusion actually amongst the different types of housing programs. I'll remind you that this is the Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credit, where it is capped at $13 million annually. That is also split up in amongst county population, where between 8,000 and less get a tax credit up to 35,000. That's 59 of our counties. 8,000 to 25,000 in populations, 32,000. And then the 17 counties from 25,000 to 75,000 is 30,000. So the more rural, the bigger the tax credit. It's to incentivize those developers to come back to Kansas and build. Unfortunately, over many years, we haven't done the best in providing significant policy that has kept up with our surrounding states and attracting our developers. You've heard from housing professionals in the past where they used to do 95% of their business in Kansas, 5% elsewhere. That is now flipped. And so I do appreciate the legislature's efforts in all housing testimony because it is an undeniable economic barrier for growth and development of any community. So anything you can do. I know there's some other issues, and I know Chairman Tarwater is spearheading some of those for the low-income housing tax credit, which is a separate issue, which has some hearings later this week. So I just want to state for the record that these are two very different programs. When this bill was drafted, and I do want to give a tip of the hat to Friends of Historic Preservation who really led the efforts, and Riley is going to be going next. You know, the tax credit was supposed to set up like the historic tax credit. It was supposed to have the transferability of these tax credits and so that they could be sold in the same year they are acquired. Unfortunately, because of the legislation, there was a technical fix that we have to address that does not allow that to happen. And what does that mean? When those tax credits are not able to take up the full 5 years, those tax credits ultimately lose value and significant value because you only have 5 years to use them. So what does that do in a term of a development? It could jeopardize the completion of a project if the tax credits are not there for all 5 years. And so what this is intended to do is to maximize the value of the tax credits that you all have already authorized. And I know the program is already is off to a good start. I'd have to defer to the Housing Resource Corporation for the specific facts and figures there, Mr. Chairman. But we do believe it's a program that can benefit our state for many years to come. So I appreciate you looking at this bill and would urge support when you work HB 2096. And I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, committee. I think we'll go ahead and take questions. We only have 3 conferees listed, so we'll go ahead and take questions after each conferee. Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, I have Tyler Holloman. Welcome to committee.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for your time today. My name's Tyler Holloman. I am the president of Frontier Development Group, as well as a board member for Friends of Historic Preservation. Frontier Development Group is a real estate development, construction, and management company based in Manhattan, Kansas. We specialize in historic preservation, rural development, and workforce housing. As an organization, we've partnered with Kansas Housing Resources Corporation on numerous projects. Many of our projects are in rural areas of the state where even a 4 or 5 unit development can really have a large impact. The state historic tax credit and the moderate income housing grant program work really well for these projects, but oftentimes, especially in today's climate, they're not quite enough. Many of the communities that we're working in, we are the first housing development that has happened sometimes in over half a century. Costs are high, labor is scarce, and oftentimes for us, comps or comparables are non-existent. Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credits has been a tool that we have used to help close this gap in several of our developments. We have used them to build energy-efficient duplexes, or rehabilitate a former hospital, turn a vacant downtown building into housing, even turn a former school building into housing. The KHITC program is a relatively new and relatively small state program, but it is having tremendous value for development in rural parts of our state. As many of you, or some of you may know, Commerce Bank has been a large purchaser and continues to be a large purchaser of state credits in the state of Kansas. We actually, as a group, we closed the very first deal with Commerce Bank for Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credits right after the program was passed. Unfortunately, shortly after that purchase, Commerce flagged the program due to transferability concerns, which Alex just covered, which put future contracts in jeopardy and made it more difficult to find investors, especially for mid-sized and smaller projects. HB 2096 makes a minor adjustment to the bill that does make the credit function more similar to the state historic tax credit, which I believe was its original intent. Making this change will increase investor appetite for the credit, thereby increasing its effectiveness. You heard from Kador, there's no fiscal impact to the state for making this change, but by making this credit more appealing to investors, the credit price will go up, and a higher credit price directly correlates to more capital available for the housing project, which means housing developers can do more projects, can build more units. You have the unique ability to create this impact without even raising the overall credit amount. So in closing, I would encourage and urge you to support this bill and to continue doing the work that you're doing to support rural housing. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I had a question with this. I'm going to call it an unintended consequence or an unintended delay. Are we behind in getting some of these contracts and projects going? Do we need to be looking at the sunset date or the completion of this program, extending that, or is it just give me an idea of what the scope looks like there?
That's a great question. I'd have to defer to Riley on the technicalities in the bill. I believe that this bill has a provision that it goes back and corrects projects that were already issued in prior years, which would certainly help certain projects get off the ground and help Commerce come in and be an investor in those projects.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any further questions? Representative Sawyer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you just explain like how this program works? Like how, like you create a project, what do you do to get the tax credit?
Yep, also a good question. So it's a pretty simple program. As Alex mentioned, it is very different than the affordable housing or the low-income program that's making a lot of headway right now. But this is a fairly straightforward certificated credit. So the way it currently works is Kansas Housing Resources Corporation awards these on a competitive basis across the state. Rural counties receive a higher price per credit. So it's up to, I think, $35,000 per housing unit. So if the way applications are received, they come into Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, they're evaluated. Once they're selected, then the investment has to be made into the project, and then the credit comes in, and most developers choose to then sell the credit. It's a one-time credit that gets sold, the equity comes into the project, and then that equity is used to complete the housing project.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you for your testimony. And last, I have Riley going with Friends of Historic Preservation. We saved all the hard questions for you.
Yeah,
so.
I know. Yeah, Alex and Tyler took most of my testimony and saved all the hard questions for me. So, I mean, I just kind of want to reiterate, this is a fairly technical fix. It's not going to add any extra burden to the state budgets. This is probably the way that it should have been drafted. And once this change is made, it'll open up the buyer's market. Commerce Bank approached us last year, raised the issue, asked us how we could fix it. And we worked on a bill, and basically they're the largest buyer of historic tax credits and housing investor tax credits. They've stopped purchasing these tax credits and have said that they won't resume purchasing these tax credits until this issue is fixed. And so I urge you to pass this bill unamended and quickly so that way we can get this funding source open back up for rural Kansas. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions to the best of my ability.
Okay. Just to reiterate the question that I had earlier, is simply making this retroactive going to be sufficient to kind of catch everybody up?
Yes.
Okay.
I've double checked all of the language with Housing Resources and the Department of Revenue. We've looked at it pretty closely, and so it will apply to tax credits that have already been issued and future tax credits.
Okay, thank you. Committee, we saved all the hard questions for Riley, so maybe not. Representative Awerkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi. So when the tax credits are sold, I've heard that they're sold for 80 cents on the dollar. How does that whole market work? So essentially somebody's building a project, we're giving a tax credit, they're selling it off, and then whoever's buying it's just submitting that to the state, reducing their tax liability. But can you walk through the whole transaction there?
To be quite frank, no, I cannot. I'm not personally involved in the purchasing of tax credits, but I can have Commerce Bank reach out to you and explain to you how that works. Or I don't know if Alex knows how that works. Okay. That's a banking question.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Oral, that would be helpful to the committee to get some information on exactly how that transaction works, if you would mind providing that to the committee at a later time. Okay. Yes, Representative Avercamp. Nope. Any further questions, committee? See none. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
That is everyone that I had listed. Is there anyone else wishing to appear as a proponent on House Bill 2096? Seeing none, do not show any neutral or opponent testimony. Is there anyone wishing to appear either as neutral or opponent on House Bill 2096? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the hearing. And committee, this is record time, but that concludes our business for the day. Yes, Representative Helgerson.
I wasn't sure, last week in jest, possibly, or maybe serious, we talked about a subcommittee, and you were going to check to see if that was possible. If it is possible, do you want me to proceed, and do you want me to ask for volunteers, or do you want to assign people?
I took it seriously. If you were joking, I went ahead and took it seriously.
I'm serious.
And I would like, doesn't have to be a show of hands, but if you are interested in serving on a subcommittee to look at sales tax exemptions, please come see me or Representative Helgerson after the committee today, and we'll move forward with that. So, did you have a bill request? Okay, yeah, I thought so. We're going to return to the item of business, request for bill introductions, and Representative, you might hit the button.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 25 RS 0888, an act concerning taxation related to property taxation, disqualifying property from the carbon dioxide capture and sequestration property tax exemption if used to inject animal manure into the ground, relating to income tax disqualifying from the carbon dioxide capture and sequestration, property accelerated depreciation, deduction if machinery and equipment were used to inject animal manure into the ground, amending KSA 79-233 and 79-32256 and repealing the existing sections.
Okay, that was pretty extensive. I don't know if we have any questions or not. Okay, is this on behalf of yourself or a different
And
organization?
this is my bill.
Okay, all right. Any questions, committee? Seeing none, without objection, the request is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Committee, that concludes our business for the day, and we are adjourned.